Have you ever experienced something so incredible that it felt almost unbelievable? Yeah, me too. And today, you're about to witness something that'll blow your mind. It's a rare video of Sadhguru that not many people know about. Honestly, what he shares in this video might completely change the way you see life. We're so used to hearing the same advice over and over that when something truly revolutionary comes along, it almost feels unreal. But that's exactly what you're going to discover here, a perspective that challenges everything you've ever known about living fully. Curious? Get ready, because what's coming next is something you'd never expect. Now, picture yourself walking through a busy market, full of noise, people rushing around, and vendors shouting to get attention. In the middle of all this chaos, there's someone who remains completely calm. Sadhguru, with his sharp eye, noticed a man who stood out, not because of what he was selling, but because of the peaceful energy around him. He was just a simple vegetable vendor, but his inner calm was impossible to ignore. While everyone else seemed stressed and distracted, he was in perfect harmony with everything around him. How often have you found yourself in a chaotic place, wishing you had that kind of peace where nothing could shake you? What's fascinating is that this vendor wasn't special in any material way. His vegetables weren't fresher than anyone else's, and his stall wasn't the most noticeable. But there was something about him that made Sadhguru stop. He radiated a peace that went beyond just selling vegetables. It makes you think. What really sets us apart isn't what we do or what we own, but the energy we bring to everything. Have you ever wondered what you could achieve if you could hold on to that kind of peace, even during life's toughest moments? Intrigued by the vendor's presence, Sadhguru walked over to him. The conversation that followed revealed much more than he expected. The man's story ran deeper than anyone could have guessed just by looking at him. It was like he had uncovered a secret about life that few people ever find, and that secret was written all over his calm, glowing face. Is it really possible to find a state of peace that remains steady, even in the middle of life's chaos? What did this vendor know that so many others haven't figured out? The vegetable vendor's life wasn't always as peaceful as it appeared. He had gone through a dark period where illness had taken over his life. At his weakest point, his family abandoned him because they didn't know how to cope. That feeling of being completely alone, with no support, and on the edge of death is something most of us can't even imagine. But for him, it was in that moment of despair that his transformation began. For months, he was left to face his fate, not knowing if he would survive. His condition was so severe that even the doctors had little hope. In the midst of loneliness and pain, he reached a breaking point. Many would have given up. But he did something different. He accepted his mortality, his weakness, and that acceptance began to shift his perspective. The strength he found didn't come from outside. It came from within. Sometimes real change doesn't happen when life is going smoothly, but when we're standing on the edge, forced to look deep within ourselves. What's truly amazing is that even after losing everything, his health, his family, and all his material possessions, he found something most people spend their whole lives searching for: inner peace. He realized that physical pain and isolation didn't have to control his state of mind. It makes you wonder, how often do we tie our happiness to external things when true peace comes from accepting who we are, no matter the situation? His story shows us that even in the darkest times, transformation is possible if we're open to it. After months of facing the uncertainty of death, the vegetable vendor experienced a perspective shift that few people ever do. He came to understand that being aware of your own mortality isn't a curse, it's a blessing in disguise. When you truly grasp that death is always near, life takes on a whole new meaning. Every moment becomes more precious, and the worries that once felt overwhelming start to seem insignificant. It's interesting how sometimes it takes facing death to really learn how to live. Have you ever thought about how different your life would feel if you reminded yourself every day that your time is finite? What he went through was a deep release from everything that used to weigh him down. Everyday worries, fears about the future, and other people's expectations. All of it disappeared once he realized that death is always present. Instead of seeing this as tragic, he found freedom in that awareness. How often do we trap ourselves in fear, forgetting that the only certainty in life is that it will end? By accepting this truth, maybe we can start living with more lightness, more purpose, and less urgency. What's really interesting is that even though he lost everything, he no longer felt like a loser. In fact, he gained something that most people never find: true peace. This teaches us something powerful. It doesn't matter how much money, status, or recognition you have. If you can't accept your own mortality, your peace will always be fragile. But by embracing this reality, everything starts to make sense in a new way. How can you bring this perspective into your own life and learn to see mortality not as a burden, but as a tool to make each moment richer? Sadhguru teaches us that life and death aren't two separate events. They're part of the same process. With every breath, we are both living and dying, and it's this connection that gives life its depth. When we realize that death isn't the opposite of life, but an inevitable companion, something inside us changes. Too often, we go through life ignoring this truth, but when we become aware of it, every moment becomes more meaningful. In a way, death serves as a gentle reminder that time is precious, urging us to live fully in the present. The vegetable vendor came to deeply understand this connection during his long battle with illness. Facing the possibility of death every day taught him to appreciate what was left of his life. The illness, which once felt like an enemy, became his greatest teacher. He realized that living in fear of death was like being dead inside. How would your life change if you could embrace this truth, living without fear of the future while making the most of every moment? Sadhguru says that when we become aware that death is a continuous process within us, something inside awakens. Our life energy becomes stronger, and life feels more alive. This connection between living and dying doesn't have to be a sad thought. It can actually help us experience life more fully. Imagine the freedom of knowing that death is just part of the journey, and instead of fearing it, you use it to be more present and aware. How would that change the way you live? Now that you've learned this, the real question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep living on autopilot, or will you take these lessons and truly transform your life? Think about it. What's stopping you from living fully, from accepting life and death as part of the same process? Maybe it's time to change how you see things. If you want to unlock the potential inside you, now is the time. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you can keep learning more about these deep, life-changing teachings. Don't wait until tomorrow to start what you can begin today. And don't forget to share this video with anyone who needs to hear these words. Together, we can go much further.